The power of experience. Once upon a time, in a bustling harbor town, there was a massive cargo ship, the pride of the fleet, that had come to a sudden and inexplicable halt. Its colossal engine, a marvel of engineering, had stopped working entirely. The ship couldn't move an inch. Dock workers, crew members, and engineers swarmed the ship, all trying to diagnose the problem. Without its engine, the ship was dead in the water, and with every passing hour, the losses mounted into thousands of dollars. The owner of the ship, a wealthy and influential businessman, was growing more frustrated by the minute. He watched as the finest engineers he could hire paced around the engine room, scratching their heads. They were experts, graduates from the most prestigious technical schools, yet none of them could figure out what had gone wrong. "They're supposed to be the best," the owner muttered angrily. "How can no one fix it?" For days, the engineers worked tirelessly. They tested every valve, rewired every circuit, and examined every bolt, screw, and pipe. They brought in tools the size of furniture, scanners, monitors, and even drones, but the engine remained silent. Each day ended in disappointment, and the ship's owner grew more impatient and desperate. On the fourth day, a mechanic from the crew tentatively approached the ship's owner. "Sir," he said quietly, "there's someone you might want to call. He's not like these engineers. He doesn't use fancy tools or computers, but he knows ship engines better than anyone alive." The owner's eyes narrowed. "Who is he?" "He's a master mechanic, sir. They say he's been working on engines for over 30 years. He's retired now, but people still call him when no one else can figure things out." The owner frowned, skeptical. "Why haven't I heard of him before?" "He's old-fashioned, sir," the mechanic replied, "but his hands know engines the way a captain knows the sea. If anyone can fix it, it's him." Out of options, the owner reluctantly agreed to send for the man. The next morning, just as the sun peeked over the horizon, an old man arrived at the dock. He wore simple, oil-stained overalls, and his calloused hands bore the marks of decades of labor. He carried with him a small, worn toolbox that looked far too modest to be of any use. The crew stared as he boarded the massive ship. "This is the guy," someone whispered. The ship's owner was even less impressed. "You're telling me this man is going to fix my ship when none of the top engineers could?" The old man didn't say much. He simply smiled and said, "Take me to the engine room." Down in the cavernous engine room, the old mechanic stood in silence. He took a deep breath and closed his eyes for a moment, as if listening to the ship itself. Then, he began to walk slowly around the enormous engine, his hands brushing over its surface as though he were greeting an old friend. The engineers watched, confused. "What's he doing?" one whispered. "He's not even using any tools." The old man didn't seem to notice the murmurs. He listened carefully, leaned close, and occasionally gave a small nod to himself. After about 10 minutes, he stopped. His wrinkled face lit up with the faintest of smiles. "Here," he said softly, pointing to a specific section of the engine. The crew and engineers crowded around, straining to see what he'd discovered. The old man set his toolbox on the ground, opened it, and pulled out a small hammer. It was tiny, almost laughably so, compared to the massive machinery before him. A few of the engineers exchanged glances, smirking. "A hammer? That's his big solution." Ignoring them, the old man walked up to the spot he'd identified, lifted the hammer, and gave one precise, gentle tap. Tap. For a moment, there was silence. Then, a low rumble began to spread through the engine. It grew louder and stronger, until suddenly the engine roared back to life, its deep hum echoing throughout the ship. The massive vessel vibrated beneath their feet as its heart began to beat once again. The room erupted in cheers. Crew members hugged each other, and the engineers stared in stunned silence. The ship's owner practically danced with joy. "You did it," he shouted, grabbing the old man's hand. "You fixed it. You're a genius. How much do I owe you?" The old man wiped his hands on a rag and said calmly, "That will be $20,000. The owner's face fell. $20,000, he sputtered. "For what? You were here for less than half an hour. All you did was tap the engine with a hammer." "I want a detailed invoice," the owner added, trying to sound firm. "I need to understand exactly what I'm paying for." The old man nodded, pulled a notepad and pen from his toolbox, and wrote the invoice. He handed it to the owner, who read, tapping with a hammer, $2 knowing where to tap, $19,998. The owner's mouth fell open. He looked at the old man, speechless. The mechanic smiled patiently and said, "Sir, you're not paying me for the 5 minutes I spent here. You're paying for the 30 years I spent learning where to tap. That knowledge didn't come for free. It cost me years of hard work, trial, and error. Anyone can swing a hammer, but very few know where to strike." The ship's owner fell silent, the truth of those words settling over him. Slowly, he nodded and handed over the payment without another word. As the old man left the ship, the crew watched him in awe. The engineers, humbled, finally understood the true value of experience.